So I did a show called Miracle, which is it's on Netflix at the moment, and the second half of it was faith healing. It was a bold move because I knew my audiences wouldn't believe in it any more than I do, which is not at all, essentially, in terms of anything divine happening. And we are talking like that kind of evangelical faith healing, people being, slain in the spirit and shaking around on stage and their aches and pains going and so on. I'd seen a lot of that at work and was fascinated to see if I could get it to work and what that would mean within the context of a show where people are, approaching it skeptically like me. And it was amazing. It was an extraordinary thing to do and to do every night, and it did work very well. What I got from that and what it highlighted was the psychological component of suffering. And essentially the way that it works, the way that sort of healing works, aside from a few very specific tricks that some of those so-called healers use. And incidentally, this is not remotely a criticism of religious belief. It's kind of a scam that hijacks sincere belief in its own name. So this is a criticism of the scam, certainly not religion or anyone's belief. But aside from a few specific tricks that are like magic tricks that get pulled off, what's essentially happening psychologically, and this is what I created in the show, was you get a lot of adrenaline going, because adrenaline is essentially a painkiller. And if you've got an ache in your back, but you're made to feel a bunch of adrenaline, you're not going to feel that pain any more than if you've stubbed your toe and it hurts, and then a tiger walks into the room. You're not going to be bothered by the toe. You're just getting out of the room. So you create a lot of adrenaline. And then generally the way these things work is you invite people forward, and then there's a filtering process. So by the time people are coming up on stage, they've been filtered to the people that are going to suit the show the best and have the best sort of testimony of what's just happened. And then the other aspect of it is that you're interrupting a story. You're interrupting the story that someone is living of their particular ailment. And this is where it gets really interesting, because you start to see this grey area between, for example, somebody came up in the first week and they'd been paralyzed on one side of their body since they were a child. And she was in floods of tears because she could move her arm. And if you'd have x-rayed her before and afterwards, clearly nothing changes. But I was sort of reminded that I sort of had a bursitis in my shoulder. I had like a bad shoulder. And for a long time, I'd been putting on a jacket with a dead arm. And my shoulder had sort of got better, but I just really got in the habit of putting on a jacket like this. And probably if someone had said, "Your shoulder is healed," and made a big deal of it and given me a little burst of adrenaline anyway, and he said, "Now put on your jacket normally," I'm sure I'd have done that and gone, "Oh my God, that's amazing. How did you just do that?" Whereas the reality is I could have done it like that anyway. And I think at some level, that sort of way of you just get into a habit and you start to identify with a particular ailment seems to create a sort of a large section of our experience of what's wrong with us. And that these sort of psychological processes, this sort of healing in inverted commas, is highlighting that. It's leaning into that. So it's very effective. And I've had people years after that show saying that it worked. I thought it would maybe work for the 5 minutes they're on stage, but I've had people years afterwards saying, "I watched the show on TV and my pain has gone, my golf injury has gone, and I'm fine now." And we're dealing with very small percentages, obviously, so I'm not claiming anything beyond that. It's very small percentages. But the experience of what someone's narrative is around their condition, combined with a bit of showmanship, it was kind of extraordinary. And as a real skeptic myself going into it, it was fascinating. And then, of course, you start to see how the person doing it starts to go mad, how you could see yourself as a God figure if you're doing it within that context, because people are treating you as God because they're seeing God coming through you. That's the illusion you're creating.
Sometimes people hold a core belief that is very strong. When they are presented with evidence that works against that belief, the new evidence cannot be accepted. It would create a feeling that is extremely uncomfortable called cognitive dissonance. And because it is so important to protect the core belief, they will rationalize ignore and even deny anything that doesn't fit in with the core belief. Mark Twain, it's easier to fool people than to convince them they have been fooled. Why? Because they don't, understandably, want to realize they've been fooled. But it's a wonderful thing to realize you've been fooled. It's a great gift, because from that point you will not be fooled any longer. It's a wonderful gift.
Abundance is yours. Claim it today. Subscribe for more great videos.